Okay, we're up to Daf Lamed Gimel Amid Aleph, the top of the Amid. V'Omer Rav Yehuda Omer Shmuel. Kosval Shnei Dafim. If instead of the mezuzah being written on one column, you write it on two columns, meaning half in one column, half in the other, the halacha is it's puzzle. It's puzzle. It has to be written in one column. Writing it in two columns makes it puzzle. I might need your Gemara today because I have pictures. I was looking for it. I couldn't find it. If they have pictures in the back, that'd be good towards the end. So I have a kasha. Kosval Shnei Dafim v'nicha b'shnei sifim. The Brisa said that if you write the mezuzah in two columns, it's puzzle. The problem is the Brisa says that if you write it in two columns and place it in two cloths, then it's puzzle. The implication being that if you write it on two columns on one cloth, it's fine. It's mezuzah. Two columns. You open up a mezuzah, it's one column. If you write it in two columns, it's puzzle. Says the Gemara Avakasha, you're telling me writing on two columns is automatic psul, but the Brisa says, Kosval Shnei Dafim v'nicha b'shnei sivim. If you write the mezuzah in two columns and place it in two cloths, then it's puzzle. The implication being, Ha b'saf echad kshera. If you write it on one cloth, even in two columns, it's kosher. So what's going on? So the Gemara says, no, really two columns is puzzle. Why does the Brisa say two cloths? What it means is like this. If you write it in two columns, it's keilu. You wrote it on two cloths, and it's puzzle. Says the Gemara, Rui l'shnei sivim kamar. V'am Rav Yehuda Shmuel. This is something that we don't really do this anymore. But generally, when you're entering a room, you put on the right side, right? So the question is always like, well, which side is the right side? Because if you're going from the hallway into the shul, that's the right side. If you go from the shul into the hallway, the other side's the right side. So generally, what you do is there's a front door, and you sort of look about how the flow of the house goes. But what if you have a situation where the house has two entrances, mamish? There's there's a front entrance and a back entrance, and they're both used the same amount of time, and then you have that middle room in between. So it legitimately, you cannot tell which one it is, because there is no flow of traffic, because there are two entrances that are legitimate from outside. So what do? So it says the Gemara, halach achar heker tzir. You look where the door swings. They would have a pivot in the doorway. Basically, you look at where the door swings. If the door swings into that room, then that's the entrance to that room. If the door swings into the other room, then it's considered an entrance to the other room. Like I said, it's generally not done because in our homes, we generally don't have a room that is mamish, like there are entrances to both and you cannot tell. Sometimes, but generally, it's not the case. This is talking about a case where there's two outside entrances and there's an middle room, and the outside entrances are mamish used by both. And says the Gemara, my heker tzir, what's the case? Amravada avaks, it's the socket. Hey chidami, what's the situation where you would ever need to do this? It's a case where there's two houses and there's an entrance, there's a room in between. Between the men's houses and the women's houses. Meaning in such a situation where you mamish have the two entrances. So I guess the women were in one room, the men were in the other, but the wife of the house, there's both. For her, it's equal, and there's two entrances in the outside. So the middle room legitimately cannot tell which way to go. So that you go with where the pivot, where the door, basically where the door swings. They describe it as the pivot in the door because they used to not really have hinges on the side. They had a hinge on the bottom and on the top, and it would swing that way. But basically, look at how the door swings open. Huh? Get a new house.
No, I'm talking about like when you asked, in the back of the house.
Yeah, but the back of the house, that's the point. The back of the house, I could already tell you. The back of the house is a side machlokes. Machlokes ukiveg and chazanish. But most rooms nowadays, you could tell because there's a front entrance and that's the main entrance. If you have two legitimate entrances, that's when you do have to deal with heker tzir. It is done. It's just not as common.
Think of how all the houses we had the sunken living room.
Yeah, I'm not.
When you go into the dining room, you go in this way.
Correct.
When you go into the
Correct. Those are always the tricky part. But like I said, usually if you ask the homeowner, there is a still derech of how the room is meant. Okay. Zak Gemara weiter. Reish Galusa bana beisa. Reish Galusa built a house, and Amar Leila Rav Nachman kavle mezuzah. So he called Rav Nachman and he said, put up my mezuzahs. You bring a rabbi to put up mezuzahs. So Amar Rav Nachman tali dashi bereisha. Rav Nachman said you got to put the doorposts up first. In order for it to be a mezuzah, to b'chai mezuzah, you need the lintel on top, right? The lintel on top and the doorposts. Basically, this case there was no doorpost. It's almost like this. There's no doorpost yet. It's just a hole, and he wanted to put the mezuzah up there and then put the doorpost. The problem is that's a concept called tasa v'leimina ase, which means you have to have the item mechayiv then do the mitzvah. You can't put the mitzvah on while it's potter, then trigger the requirements to make it chayiv. So it's called tasev v'loy min ha'asay. Again, it's hard to know exactly. You have to sort of understand tasev min ha'asay. Meaning, in this case, let's say this is not considered side post because it's just a hole. So right now it's not mechayiv in mezuzah. If I were to put a mezuzah up now and then add the doorpost afterwards, then what would happen is the second it's mechayiv, you're already yaitza because the ma'aseh had already been done. That's called tasev v'loy min ha'asay. So that's what Rabbi Nachman told the Reish Galusi. You got to put up the full door frame before I put up the mezuzah. If I put up the mezuzah before the door frame's up, and then you put up the door frame around the mezuzah, it'll be pater, it'll be chayiv, but then you already have the ptur in it. Yeah, it's a similar thing like that. That would be another example. Says the Gemara, Rav Yudam Rav, Asa Kim. Okay, so this is very interesting. I'm going to read the Gemara, and I'll tell you the two mahalchim of how we do this. This is a fascinating thing. Asa Kimin Nagar. If you make the mezuzah like a bolt, psula, it's puzzle. What does it mean like a bolt? So Rashi says, if you put the mezuzah in the door horizontally, so instead of lying it vertically like we do, or at a slant, as I'll get to in a moment, if you put it into the door, right? You could put the mezuzah in the door, right? We had it in the basement downstairs by the kitchen. Eretz Yisrael, they're all like this. They drill a little bit of a slit in the wall, and they put the mezuzah in the wall itself. That's fine, as we'll see, as long as it's not too far deep. That's fine. Instead of having the mezuzah up vertically, you did it horizontally. It's possible. Rabbeinu Tam completely disagrees. He says, no, adarabba, it's supposed to be horizontally. When he says what it means is a nagar, like a bolt, is the opposite. Vertically. Meaning Rashi holds it has to be vertically and horizontal as possible. Rabbeinu Tam holds it has to be horizontal and vertical as possible. So, like a Sefer Torah, right? Rashi holds it's like a Sefer Torah because Sephardi Sefer Torahs are up. Rabbeinu Tam says it's like a Sefer Torah because Ashkenazi Sefer Torah is lying down. It's lying down, horizontal. So what do we do? So what we do is obviously Sephardim and the Gra hold like straight up Rashi, straight up vertical, like a line. What Ashkenazim do is we do a tilt. Why? This way you yaitz both shitas. It's in between horizontal, it's in between vertical, and he yaitz l'chol hadayis. That's or nobody's happy with it. That's correct.
In
Worms.
Christian Europe,
Christian.
during
Yeah.
their time,
I could have taken like this.
if they had it like this, the guy came and put a Hagen cross.
Interesting.
And they turned it into a cross. So
It's
that-
one of those
that-
theories.
that
It's
was-
like
that was one of the
I got you.
problems.
I don't know. Rabbeinu Tam seems to hold that that's not the derech. It's not but derech.
Father didn't have to deal with Christians.
Efsher. Rabbeinu Tam seems to be saying it independent of cross, but okay. Yeah, why not? Yeah. In Eretz Yisrael, every place in Yerushalayim, they're all like that. They're all in the wall itself.
No, he means like instead of being like this or recessed in the wall, actually drilling a hole in the wall.
Yes,
putting it in this
that's how
way,
Rashi understands the problem. Yeah.
like this.
Yeah, that's how Rashi holds the problem. Rabbeinu Tam holds that that's the way it should be. So says the Gemara, Eini, is this true, but is it a bolt a problem? Eini va kiyasa Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef Amer kulu mezuzah de Rav Minyamin Nagar havavidan. All the mezuzahs of Rebbe's house were like this. How can you say it's possible? All of them were like this. Vahi pischa da'il be Rebbe lebe midrasha lo yav le mezuzah. Another halacha is that the room that Rebbe would enter. Okay, the room that Rabbi would enter from his Beis Medrash, meaning basically, like there's the main entrance to the Beis Medrash, and then Rabbi had a side entrance from a side entrance to the Beis Medrash, like a private entrance, like a Rav entrance. He didn't have mezuzah by that door, so that's a side point we'll get to in a second. But the point is, Rabbi's house, all of them were like a bolt. So says the Gemara, loy kasha, ha Davida kisichta, ha Davida kistavira. So what this means is, according to Rashi, what it means is like this. If it's like a bolt horizontally, it's a problem. In Rebbe's house, it wasn't like a bolt horizontally. It was more like an elbow. So on the bottom, it might have had a little bit of like this, but it was actually more vertical. You have to know exactly what it looked like. But basically, according to Rashi, the answer is, if it's vertical, it's fine. If it's horizontal, it's a problem. Rabbeinu Tam holds the exact opposite. If it's vertical, it's a problem. If it's horizontal, it's fine. So it's based on these mahalchim. This is mamash the sugya of Rashi Rabbeinu Tam. Says the Gemara, Eini, wait. Another halacha was that Rebbe's entrance to the Beis Medrash did not have a mezuzah. Says the Gemara, Vahi pischa da'ayva ayil be Rav Huna lebe midrasha, but Rav Huna had a small entrance to the Beis Medrash, mamish like Rebbe's. V'havale mezuzah, and he put up a mezuzah. So what's going on? So the Gemara answers, Hahu ragol have. Okay, we don't paskin this way. We paskin that every doorway in the house requires a mezuzah. But this Gemara's opinion felt that you only put up a mezuzah on the door that is most commonly used. Meaning, if let's say I have a room that has two entrances, according to this opinion, which we do not paskin like, you only put a mezuzah on the door that is more commonly used. In Rav Huna's case, although it was a side entrance that he would use, everyone also would use it. In Rebbe's case, he was the only one who used that entrance. So because it was not used by the public, and it was statistically more of a minority use, no mezuzah. Again, we don't paskin this way, we paskin every door requires a mezuzah, but if you're going with the opinion of the Gemara, that it only requires a mezuzah, if you go by the entrance to the room that is the most used, Rebbe's entrance was not the most used. Yeah. Where does it say puzzle? Oh, wait. Where does it say puzzle? Oh no, because by a bolt, because you're putting it up improperly. Meaning it's a puzzle, meaning you're not yoytze the mitzvah. Oh, so the mitzvah is not puzzle. I guess it's trying to emphasize you do not have the protection that a mitzvah normally brings. It's a good point. It should be like lo yotza. That would be a better. Mitzvah la'anicha b'tchila shlish ha'elyon. It's a mitzvah to place the mezuzah on the top third of the doorway. So let's say the door is 9 feet tall, top third from 6 to 9 feet. Says the Gemara, that's the first opinion, which is obviously how we paskin. Rav Huna Amar, Rav Huna has a completely different take. Rav Huna says, as long as it's not a tefach to the roof or a tefach to the floor, the entire doorway is up for grabs. Rav Huna says, Magbiya min akarka tefach, marchik min akayra tefach, all pesach kula kasha mezuzah. You got a tefach on the bottom from the floor, no good. You got a tefach to the roof, no good. The entire doorway is fine. Obviously, we don't follow Rav Huna. Says the Gemara, so you have these two opinions. The first opinion has got to be the top third. The second opinion is at the entire doorway. Here's the issue. These are Amaroyim. The problem is like this Meisvei. Look at this Brisa. The Brisa says, Makbiyah min akarka tefach, marchik min akayra tefach, v'ol pesach kula kasha mezuzah Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says the exact same words as Rav Huna. One tefach to the roof, no good. One tefach to the floorboard, no good. The rest of the mezuzah is perfect. The rest of the whole doorway is perfect. So Rav Huna is literally saying Shitas Rav Yehuda. That's good. The problem was, what was the first Shita, which is Shmuel, that it's got to be the top third. What does the Brisa then say? Rav Yosi Oimer ukshartem uksavtem ma kshira begoiva af ksiv begoiva. The pasuk equates the mezuzah to tefillin, just like the tefillin it's at the top of the arm by the top, high of the bicep. So to the mezuzah has to be at the top of the door. Now the way the Gemara is reading this right now, not the top third, it's got to be mamish at the very top. So Shmuel, who said the top third, is seemingly not like anybody. Because Rav Yossi, was this Rav Yossi? Rav Yossi said it's got to be the top of the door. We assume what Rav Yossi meant is not the top third. It's got to be mamish at the very top. The same way by the tefillin. It's at the very top of the arm. So to the mezuzah, it's at the very top of the doorway. So it seems like Rav Shmuel, who says the top third, is not like anybody. So obviously a very simple answer, and that is Shmuel is like Rav Yossi. And when Rav Yossi said the top, what he meant is the top third, and what Shmuel said the top third, he meant don't go below the top third. Meaning, when Shmuel said the top third, what he meant is you could only do the top third and not dip below it. And when Rav Yossi said the top, that's what he meant. Says the Gemara, Bishlem le Rav Huna hu damar Rav Yehuda, el Shmuel damar kaman, loik Rav Yehuda v'loik Rav Yossi. Amar Rav Huna b'reid Rav Nasan la'olam Rav Yossi. Really, Shmuel follows Rav Yossi. Go to the next page. Umay tchila shlish ha'elyon dekamar. And when Shmuel said the top third, L'harchika, what he meant is, do not distance it below the top third. That it should not dip below the top third. And the truth is, and what the truth is, that when Rav Yossi said the top of the doorway, that's what he meant. So Rav Yossi, when he said the top of the door, he didn't mean mamish, the top, dafka, it has to be the top tefach or two. What he meant is the top third. And Shmuel said the same thing, so that really Shmuel's in a line with Rav Yossi. Says the Gemara, Amarava, mitzvah linicha betevach hasamach shesarab. We said this yesterday. If you have a doorway that's, let's say, 2 feet thick, it's a very thick doorway, you should put the mezuzah at the very, very end of the doorway. So let's say this is, my right hand is the outside, my left hand is the inside, and the entire doorway is in between. It should be towards the end, towards the outside. Why? Says the Gemara, 2 reasons. My time, Rabbanan Amri Kadesh Yivka Mezuzah Miyad. First of all, Rabbanan say that way when you enter the house, the first thing you touch is a mitzvah, right? So if it's towards the very entrance, meaning if you have a thick doorway, it's mamish by the outside, not outside, but it's by the end of the doorway. That way, the first thing you enter when you enter the house, boom, you hit a mitzvah right away. So it sets the tone for the entrance to the home. And Rav Chanina Besura Amar Ki Hechi Dinitare the Tintare. Rav Chanina says it's that way. It's protecting more. The mezuzah protects. Think of it like a force field. It protects that way inside the house or inside the room. So you want it to cover more doorway. So you put it at the very end of the doorway. That way, the force field of protection goes further, as opposed to if you put it right by the entrance of the room, then you're not protecting the doorway area. Very simple. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chanina, very famous Gemara, which Unkelos Hager made very famous in Avodah Zarah. Look how different is Hashem is from mortal kings. When it comes to mortal kings, they're inside, and the guards protect them. The king doesn't stand guard for the subjects, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not like them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Enokein, Avodav Yoishim Befrim, V'Misham B'Chutz. Shenema Hashem, Shemrecha, Hashem Tzilcha Yaminach, Hashem Shemrecha, Hashem Tzilcha Yaminach. Hashem's not like that. The king, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is standing by the door, protecting Klal Yisrael, protecting the subjects inside the room. Weiter. So I said before, again, we had it downstairs in the kitchen, we'll have it again. And in Eretz Yisrael, it's all like this, and that is the mezuzah is not generally in a case on the door. What they do is they sort of drill into the doorway and put the mezuzah in. It's actually very nice, it's a smooth look. So says the Gemara, are there any restrictions? And the answer is yes. You cannot drill too far in. So let's say, okay, this is the doorway, right? So normally you just put like a case over here, you drill in, put it in. Let's say, this is the whole doorway. Let's say I want to drill in 2 feet. Stick my hand all the way in, put it in, and then I'll cover it. No. If it's a tefach in, it's too deep. It's got to be at the end, at the surface of the doorway, and you want to drill in fine. But to drill in 5 inches, shtup it in, and then basically like cover it up, so now it's in the wall, that's no good. Says the Gemara, Darish Rav Yosef Berei the Rava Mishneh the Rava, Hemek lo tefach. If you made the doorpost, you drill the mezuzah into a tefach, then it's puzzle. Okay, it's puzzle. It's too far in. Le mesayele. I have a raya to this. That what? That if you put the mezuzah in a tefach, no good. Now let me explain outside what we're going to have. There's a brisa that mentions a tefach. So you see tefach. But the Gemara is going to explain the brisa is actually not referring to this. The brisa is referring to a separate situation. The Gemara says, I'll prove it to you that the tefach, that if it's too far into the doorway of tefach, it's no good. Because the Brisa says, Henicha bepatzin, oishatola malbin, if you place the mezuzah in the board, or you put a brick over it, im yesham tefach tzarech mezuzah acheres, if it's a tefach deep, you need another mezuzah. The simple pshat of what the Gemara means is I have this door, I drill it in, a foot, put the mezuzah all the way in, I need another mezuzah. Why? I need another mezuzah. It's like a weird lashon. It should just say lo yatsa. I need another mezuzah because that mezuzah is too far in. It doesn't count. So you see, this Bryce is a rayas. The Gemara says, no, that's not what the Bryce is talking about. There is a complicated picture and a complicated description, but it's actually very simple. This I don't need you yet. I'm going to need you soon. This is a simple one. This I got. You ever notice? You have I gotta think the doorway to the lunchroom in YCQ, I think has this. I don't know if it's done that properly, but I think it's like aligned with this.
Double doors?
Yeah, you have double doors. You have 2 doors. The question is, so you have 2 doors, and in between there's a post holding the 2 doors in half. Whatever, like that. I don't care about how they swing, whatever. So you put one mezuzah on the right side. Do you need another mezuzah after the post? So you say to yourself, well, it's just one entranceway. No. If the center post area is a tefach wide, now it's 2 doors. If it's less than a tefach, then it's 1 door. Then it's 1 doorway. That's what the brisa means. When it says a tefach, it's not referring to sticking it in a tefach. That's the lashon is more meduik. If it's a tefach, tzarech mezuzah acheres. You need now another mezuzah because now it's 2 doorways as opposed to 1 giant door. That's. No, I don't agree with that. I definitely think you should take it down. If it's mamish done improperly, of course you should take it down. Put the mezuzah over there. No, I would take it down. Is it over Baltaisif? Maybe not, but I would not leave the mezuzah up in the wrong spot. I'd rather think I remember in one of these places, like like there were two doorways like this, and they put the mezuzah on either doorway in opposite directions. And I was like, that's just, I don't get that. I don't know what we're doing over here. So it says the Gemara, Kitanya hi bepesach shachar edelis. Over there we're talking about a doorway by the corner. Basically, it's the same thing I'm describing, but they do it by the corner. So basically the entire corner is cut off whole. It has two doors with a ptzimen in between, with a doorpost in between. And so now, is it one giant doorway, or is it two separate doorways? So the answer is, if there's a tefach in between, then it's two doorways. If there's no tefach in between, it's one doorway. So says the Gemara, that's what the Brisa meant. Here's the issue. That's the next case in the Brisa. Ha behedi ketana. Pesach sharich acharei dalas. Yeshem tefach tzarich mezuzah acheres. Ma'avin tzarich mezuzah acheres. So why would there be two cases describing the same things? The answer is very simple. Ketzad ketani. When the Brisa has two cases, it's really one case. It lays out the concept, and then it says, now let me elaborate. But it's really one description. Says the Gemara, Tana, Hamid la malbin shel kinim. If let's say the doorpost is made of reeds, what it means is it's not made of wood, it's a cheap doorpost, but it is technically a doorpost. You have two reeds on the other side and one reed on top. It's technically a reed doorway. So the halacha is cut a hole into the reeds and put a mezuzah there. Meaning the very fact that it's a very cheap material doesn't matter. If it's a doorway, it's a doorway. It says the Gemara warns of something that we had before. You cannot put the mezuzah in the reed and then stick the reed to the door, because that's called tasav leimin asay. Again, it's the same concept. You have to have a doorway, then put the mezuzah up. But if let's just say I'm making Ari's making the wood frame of a doorway, and he says to himself, let me just put the mezuzah up now. So you got the mezuzah up, and it's a portable, and then he just drills it in. Oh, there you go. No, it's possible, because tasav leimin asay. The second the doorway's up, and now it's mechayev, the mezuzah is already done. There was no ma'isa. That's called tasav leimin asay. We had this before. Says Amirava, Hani pischi shamoy. These crooked doorways, Petur Menachos. What does it mean, crooked doorways? My Pischi Shammai, Pligi bar Rav Ruchumi v'Abba Yosi, Chad Amar Delesle Tikra. One means that there's no lintel on top. You have this, by the way. This is actually a very common thing, especially nowadays with like these open concepts, where you have walls that go up and there's just a straight ceiling. So it would be like this. Let's say that was the door post. So you have that, but then it's just straight ceiling. There's nothing on top. So you have two posts, two walls, but it's a flat ceiling. There's no requirement for a mezuzah, because to have a mezuzah, you need a doorpost, you need a lintel on top, you need that thing coming down on top. Says the Gemara, another opinion, the other opinion is that there's no doorpost. Sometimes you have where the lintel's coming down, but it's just clean walls on top. Weiter, not going to be chayiv. You need doorposts plus a lintel. The shayla is if you have one doorpost and a lintel, then if it's on the right side, you chayiv, the left side not. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi bar Shila, Amar Rav Chizda, Aksadra, Petura, Mina Mezuzah. An Aksadra is Pata Mezuzah. I say it's an Aksadra. There are different types of Aksadras. Aksadra, by the way, nowadays, I think we would describe as like a porch. But so this, they probably have fixtures. But the Aksadra that he's referring to is where it has three walls, and the entire fourth wall is just open. There's no fourth wall, according to this Aksadra. There are different Aksadras, as we'll get to in a moment. This Aksadra the Gemara is referring to is where there is no fourth wall. It's just open. So because there's no fourth wall, it's not mechayev in a mezuzah. You need to have that fourth wall. It's just open. There's no doorway. There's nothing. It's just like, imagine a house that someone just cut off the side. There's no mezuzah. Because it doesn't have side posts. Says the Gemara, I have a kasha. Let's say the fourth wall had side posts. Meaning, when I say it doesn't have side posts, that's what I'm talking about. That, like, literally this entrance, there are no side posts right now. There is a hole to enter this room, but that's not a side post. Obviously, everything, if you get in, that means that there's an entranceway. An entranceway by a doorway is defined by two posts that go on the side. If you just literally hack a hole in the wall like this, that's not a chayv mezuzah yet. So that's what it was. That fourth wall was just completely open. And there was nothing holding, it was just like, I guess, like bricks, jagged bricks on either edge, So the Gemara says, but let's say there was doorposts on the side, you would be chayv. But wait a minute, aren't those doorposts just meant for structurally to hold up the wall? And the Gemara is assuming that if you have posts that are not meant as an entranceway, meaning you're not putting it up to frame a doorway, you're putting it up purely for structural protection, it's pater. So why am I chayiv in this case? I don't know how we pass, and I have to check it up, because actually someone sent me a picture yesterday, mamish, of their basement, where they had it had like these in the middle of the room. So the question is that a new entrance? Meaning, do you have multiple mezuzah? I'll show you pictures afterwards. So it's mamish the shaila. It's not meant as a doorway. It's obviously meant for structural. That's why you have that beam in there. But it does. The tsura is the doorway. So says the Gemara, if it's not meant as a doorway, if it's meant for structural, it's potter. Says the Gemara. You're right, that's what it meant. Even if it has doorposts, it's potter because those doorposts are meant for structural integrity, not for an actual doorway, to frame a doorway. I saw the exadra of Mar, it has side posts, and there's no mezuzah. What's going on? Because Abaye says it must be that he holds that those were put up for structural purposes. So they may be framed so it doesn't look ugly, but it's not meant as a doorway. It's meant as poles to hold up the building, so it's not chayiv and mezuzah. That's Abaye's shita. Says the Gemara, and this is going to take us to the end. In Aksadra was this sort of porch, but the fourth wall was completely open. So because it didn't have, when you enter, there was no doorpost, there was no lintel, there was nothing, so it's potter. Says the Gemara, wait a minute, Meisei have a kasha. Beishar, a gatehouse. That was a small little room off of the garden that the guards would sit in. So that's a basically room. Chayiv mezuzah. Aksadra, and Aksadra is chayiv mezuzah, and a marpeset, like you have at a house, a marpeset, an outdoor porch, is chayiv mezuzah. So how could you say an Aksadra is potter? This brisa says an Aksadra is chayiv. So what's going on? So says the Gemara, there are different types of Aksadras. This is an Aksadra de Beirav. This Aksadra that says is chayiv is called an Aksadra de Beirav. It's basically a porch. It's a gazebo. It's where the walls do not reach the ceiling. So you have four walls, they're short, and then there's a frame, but the walls don't actually go to the ceiling, like a mezuzah, like your sukkah, like that. So you might think that because the walls don't go to the ceiling, it's not chayiv and mezuzah. No. So this aksadra is not the aksadra we were talking about before. This one actually has a doorpost, it's got a lintel, and so what's the chiddush? The chiddush is the walls don't go to the roof. It's got like 10 tefachim walls, and then like that. So okay, so it has four walls, and it's got the lintel and the doorpost, but the walls don't reach the ceiling. That's the chiddush. It says the Gemara, that's a regular room. Why do I think that the walls have to reach the ceiling? When in halacha does the walls have to reach the ceiling? Never. In Hilchas Erevin it doesn't have to. In Hilchas Sukkah it doesn't have to. So why would I think by mezuzah it has to? Says the Gemara, Ba'aksadra rumisa. It's a Roman aksadra. Basically, those walls on the bottom that are 10 tefachim are made up of windows. So it's not even solid walls. So not only do the walls not reach the ceiling, the walls themselves are basically cut out like that, if those were to be open. So that's the walls. So you might think that because the walls themselves are not even solid walls, it shouldn't be mechayiv and mezuzah. Kamashmal, and it is. Just to finish up, Amar Rachva, Amar Rav Yehuda, Bei Harziki chayiv b'shem mezuzah. And Harziki is chayiv in two mezuzahs. What does that mean? My Bei Harziki, Amar Rav Papa Saba Mishmei Derav, Bei Yashar Pesuch Lechotzer, Ubatim Pesuchim LeBeishar. Basically like this. You have the field, the garden. Obviously, it's open garden, no mezuzah. Then it opens up into think of like what is Paris? What do they have? What's that called? The out of their house. What is it called? Like a sunroom. You know what I'm talking about? The back, like some sort of foyer. I don't know. Whatever. Basically, the kids said there was some sort of pavilion. I'm just throwing every word I know. Basically, the kids, there's some sort of small hallway room area connecting the house to the garden. The chiddush is it required mezuzahs on both doors. The door to the room, the door to the house, and the door to the garden. Because that is meant as an entranceway to the house, and you go from the garden to the house, both doors require a mezuzah. Not just the door to the house, but the other door entering to the garden as well. Don't do that. He's telling me. He's telling me like British bathroom.
Or the mudroom.
In mudroom. In America, no. Now, Vikitzer, it's a mudroom between the house and the garden, and the chiddush is that both doors require mezuzah. I'm sure they have pictures. Says the Gemara, Tan Rabbanon, gatehouse. Tan Rabbanon. Beishar hapsuch, which will finish up with this. Beishar hapsuch lagina v'lekitaris. You have a gatehouse that's between a garden and another room, meaning that you have garden, gatehouse, and room. Now it's not open directly to the house, but it's open to another mudroom. So garden, mudroom to mudroom. So basically, it's like this: The room, the doorway to the mudroom is for sure chayiv and mezuzah. The question is the doorway to the garden is in this case. It's very similar to the case before. So the Gemara says machlokes. Rav Yosi says that door is considered like the room and requires a mezuzah. No, it's like a gatehouse and it's considered part of the garden. So the doorway to the room is required of a mezuzah. The doorway to the garden is a machlokes. And the Gemara speaks it out. Rabbi Shmuel Damatavayu, Megina labayis, the doorway. Oh, so the Gemara says like this. So the way Rashi explains it, again, you have room, mudroom, garden. The doorway between the two rooms is for sure chayiv. The machlokes is the doorway between the garden and the first mudroom. So what's the machlokes about? So says the Gemara. It's very simple. Remember we had the bolt? If the entrance of that room goes straight into the garden, meaning it swings into the garden, then I'm sorry. If it swings into the other room, if the doorway between the garden and the mudroom swings into the mudroom, everyone agrees it's chayiv because it's considered an entrance to the mudroom. My time be the bayasu. The machlokes is where the bolt is swinging the door from the first mudroom into the garden. And that is Mar Savar Kiktanis Iker, Mar Savar Gina Iker. One says, well, if it swings into the garden, it's considered an entrance to the garden, it's part. The other says, no, it's still used from the mudroom to the next mudroom, therefore it's chayiv. Just to finish up, that's the first version, where the door swings into the room, into the mudroom, it's chayiv, into the garden, it's a machlokes. And the opposite, now the other opinion is, Rabbi know the opposite. If it swings into the garden, it's for sure potter. My time at Pisal Deginahu. Kipligi Megina Labayis. The machlokes is where it swings into the first mudroom. Mar Savar Bina Debayisu. Mar Savar Kula Adaita Deginu Davida. The first opinion says, well, if it swings into the mudroom, it's considered entrance to the mudroom is chayiv. The other opinion says, no, it's still considered more used from the house to the garden. Abaya v'Rava Avdi Karav Rav Yosef. They follow Rav Yosef in the machlokes. Rav Ashi Avdi Karav Shmuel L'Chumra. The hilchas of Rav Shmuel L'Chumra, the halach is to be machmer and put a mezuzah up on both doors. Stop.